As I'm recording this episode, it's a few hours before I usually publish. In fact, I wrote this episode only hours ago from scratch. Did you ever have one of those weekends when you knew you had something to do, in my case, write Monday's episode, and for some reason, other things came along and distracted you? That was me. Things like wanting to relax after work on Friday instead of writing, or deciding to finally put away a load of laundry, or writing Thursday's episode instead, and helping a friend with his podcast. Basically, I waited until my husband was out of the house and my son was taking a nap to finally getting around to writing this episode, and I decided to go with a topic that reflected my weekend. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind procrastination. But first, a quick message. I have a side project I'm working on called Podcast Share. This is a Twitter account maintained by a different podcast listener every week for them to kind of live tweet what podcasts they're listening to. You can follow the account at Podcast Share on Twitter, and I'm super excited to announce this will be launching on International Podcast Day on September 30th, and I've already started scheduling curators for the coming weeks. Find out more information or nominate a curator at podcastshare.net. When we think about procrastination, most likely new technology comes to mind as a way to put off doing what we should be doing. But before social media and mindlessly scrolling through Facebook, procrastination was around for hundreds of years. There are even Egyptian hieroglyphics dating back to 1400 BC that are translated to say, "Friend, stop putting off work and allow us to go home in good time." 600 years later, Greek poet Hesiod warned his readers not to put off work. He was, at the time, telling his brother Perseus to stop squandering his money and make something of himself in a very passive-aggressive way. Fables like Aesop's The Ant and the Grasshopper warn about the dangers of procrastination. There are plenty of passages in religious books offering the advice to get things done right away instead of waiting for another day as well. It could even be put into the category of the deadly sin of sloth, and it was Roman statesman Cicero who was known to warn his troops and citizens about the dangers of procrastination, even being the first known user of the Latin word procrastinare, pro meaning to defer to, and cras to mean tomorrow. So this isn't just a modern-day problem we have because of distractions all around us. In fact, some of the most beloved figures in history were notable for their procrastination. One of the more well-known procrastination anecdotes was about writer Victor Hugo, known for writing The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Les Miserables. However, it was the temptation of women that kept Hugo away from his writing, to the annoyance of his publishers. Finally, when he was up against the wire, it was said Hugo would give all of his clothes to his servant, so that he was forced to stay inside and write naked until the appointed time his servant would return his clothes. Writer Herman Melville procrastinated so much he had his wife chain him to his desk so he could finish Moby Dick. And remember back to the story behind the Mona Lisa, we talked about how Leonardo da Vinci took 16 years to paint the famous portrait? Well, he spent a lot of that time procrastinating by doodling in his notebooks. Actually, what was considered doodles turned out to be the basis for many inventions, architecture, and maps that were considered ahead of their time. And speaking of innovations from procrastination, Google even encourages employees to set aside 20% of their time at work for creativity, which has led to Google products like AdSense, Google News, Google Maps, and Gmail. If you've ever used AdBlock in your browser to get rid of annoying pop-ups, you can thank Henrik Asted Sorensen from Denmark, who is procrastinating studying for an upcoming university exam by writing code for a new browser called Phoenix, which we now know of as Firefox. Side note, it's also been said that the revenue lost from publishers because of people using AdBlock has led to more annoying ways for companies to generate streams of income, like clickbait articles and listicles, which I don't know about you, but I've used as a method of procrastination plenty of times because I really can't believe what number 7 is.
Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. The Latin term for that sentiment is Carpe Diem. Seize the day.
No disrespect to the late Robin Williams' role in Dead Poet Society, but Carpe Diem doesn't literally translate to seize the day. Diem is day, but carpe is actually Latin for pluck, as in plucking a fruit from a tree. In the original context of Horace's poem with this often quoted phrase, The full phrasing is Carpe Diem quam minimum credula prostero, which translates to pluck the day, trusting as little as possible in the future. But for the sake of continuity, it's one of the most used phrases when it comes to trying to beat procrastination. Hundreds of songs have been written about seizing the day, even to the extreme opposite of maybe going above and beyond and treating each day like it's your last. But then again, am I really going to be thinking about the pile of laundry I've yet to throw in the wash if I knew today was my last day? In fact, one of the reasons I was procrastinating writing this episode was because of the rumor circulating that Saturday, September 23rd, would be the end of the world. However, the Christian author who made this claim, David Mead, has since recanted his prediction, but modified it to say there wouldn't be a doomsday, but there will be a series of dire events over the next few weeks. So this gives us more time to procrastinate. By the way, NASA as well as other Christian leaders have disputed these claims. Information for this episode was sourced from Mental Floss, Make Use Of, The New Yorker, and more links which can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. And by the way, if you want some podcasts to listen to help your procrastination, I highly recommend The Productive Woman with Laura McClellan and Beyond the To-Do List with Eric Fisher. This episode was brought to you by the Story Behind executive producers who support the show through the Patreon page at patreon.com/thestorybehind. Stargate Pioneer from GonnaGeek.com, Matt from the One Word Go Show, Linguist Sam, Diane and Denise from History Goes Bump, Scott Smith from Recovering from Religion, Dan Brennick from Netflix and Swill, Jared Dunham from thehistoryfile.net, Heather Welch from Sunshine and Power Cuts, Jason Bryant from Matt Talk Online, Gerald and Andy from Two Peas on a Podcast, and newest executive producer, Bandrew Scott from the Bandrew Says podcast and Podcastage YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.